is more on the goal achievement side. I know a lot of you have been to different events or experiences where you've focused on the goal setting portion, but there's very little follow through that happens beyond that typically. And so today we're going to be really focusing on the achievement and goal process of attaining those things that you've set at the beginning of the year, or if you're setting them mid-year. But I'm curious, by raise of hand, how many of you have goals that are written down somewhere that within, if we said in 30 minutes, send us a picture of those goals, you'd be able to do it. So you'd be able to find them as well. It's not written in a notebook that you don't know where it's at. Okay, so raise your hands high. Sweet. I know that KW agents are part of the 1%ers, right? So we're high achievers. And so that's actually more than normal, which is awesome. And I'm actually going to start with a little study. How many of you have heard of the Harvard Written Goal Study? Has anybody seen that study and the results? Pretty interesting. So they did this study of students who had set goals. And one of the things that they talked about is they asked individuals first, who has goals? Okay, 84% of them did not have specific goals they're trying to achieve. And this was specific to business individuals who are studying business at Harvard. And 13% of individuals, they had goals, but they did not commit to writing it down on paper. So they had goals, they had this vision of what they wanted to accomplish, but they didn't actually put it on paper. And then you have this 3% group that had clear written goals and plans to accomplish them. Now there's two things on that piece that is super important, is not only did they have goals, but they had what? Plans. So that's my second question. Raise your hand again if you have written down goals. And keep your hand raised if you have a written down business plan that is guaranteed to help you achieve those goals. Okay, good. So that's what we're going to work on today. Okay. Now, if you look at the actual achievement of these individuals, the 13%ers, those that had goals but did not write them down, they were earning twice as much as the bottom 84%. Okay, they were doubling their income. And if you look at the top 3%, they were earning 10 times as much as the other 97% combined. And this was years later that they went back and studied these individuals and seen some of their results. So I really want you to understand it's not just setting goals that's important, it's really having a clarified plan and a system, a process to making sure that you're staying on track with those goals. So that's what we're going to speak about today. Okay. We're going to start with what I call the 7 laws of achievement. These are more of just personal kind of guiding principles. Some of these ideas I've learned from different mentors, books, experiences over time. So I'm going to share some of those with you. And this will be a precursor to actually getting into the strategy of effectively setting your goals. So we're going to start, and you don't have to write them all down right now because we're going to go through one by one on each of them. But the first one is probably one of the most important, which is the law of clarity. Okay. The law of clarity. The reality that vague goals produce vague results. And this is something that I definitely learned early on when I was first starting my sales career, completely different industry. And for me, the goal was just to earn a lot of money. What is a lot of money? Right? And I had luckily mentors who helped me to get very clear about what I wanted. And one of the processes that and this was probably 4 or 5 years in, where I started to create just a bucket list. Like what are the things that I'd like to achieve, accomplish in my lifetime? And one of those things that I'd encourage is to do 2 different things. One is a bucket list. And I have mine in 7 different categories of life, like life, business, health, wealth, relationships. One of them obviously is the fun and travel side, which has been, that's kind of my hobby. And I have just a spreadsheet. I know some of you know that I am obsessed with spreadsheets. That's like my fun time. My games basically is building spreadsheets. But I will go ahead and just list off what are the things that I would love to do in life. Over the next 50 years, what would be something that I'd like to experience or accomplish? And another way that you can look at this is asking yourself, what are those things that I'd love to tell my grandkids when I'm on the rocking chair? Like, what are the experiences that I'd like to share with them? Who would I like people to describe me as when I pass away? What are those things that I want to be remembered for? So I know I'm showing you just a list of the fun items, but also creating a list of who do I want to be, what I want to be known for. And what happens is that starts to influence the goals you set for this year, the next 3 years, the next 5, and so forth. So it's actually very important to look long-term first and start getting clear about what is the 10, 15, 30-year plan. And one of the things you won't hear me talk too much about, but it's, actually, I'll get to that part in just a moment, but the big focus is first just getting clarity around what it is that you want, who do you want to become, and setting those specific targets, benchmarks for yourself, creating a list, okay? One of the things that's interesting is we're in the real estate industry, right? How many of you have built, either with yourself or a client, a custom home? Okay. So I'm curious, what is the process when you sit down with a builder and you say, Renelle, I want you to build me a house. Okay, and she's a custom home builder. What's one of the first things they're going to ask for? What do you want? Before they even ask the price, right? They're not going to even tell you what the price would be until you clarify what it is that you want. Okay, they're not going to start laying bricks as soon as you say that I want a house built. They're going to get very defined on what it is exactly that you want, right? And we have to do the same thing with our life. Before just going and chasing goals, we have to get very clear about what it is that we want, what timeline we want it in, and then also creating an effective plan to getting there, okay? So law of clarity, number 1. Number 2 is law of purpose. Law of purpose, I'm going to share an experience where this really is something that I learned the value of, and this was in 2017. So up to that point, I already had some big whys, some big driving forces. And in Door to Door, every summer, they'd have these competitions. They'd call it the Soul Survivor. So it was essentially a bracket-style competition, and they'd pin the 128 top representatives or sales individuals against each other in a bracket, and they'd whittle it down slowly till it's the last 2. And 2016, I was embarrassed in this competition. I did get to the final 2, but that last round, Michael Taylor, who's a great friend of mine today, ended up really embarrassing me by how well he did in that competition and completely destroyed me in the game. And it's based off of total sales. And so 2017, fast forward a year, I had some of that, let's just call it like, healthy competition that was built up against Mike Taylor. And I knew it was going to be he and I getting to the final 2 again. And we get to this stage where the week leading up to this competition, because it's an entire week long, what I did this time was a little bit different. Because prior to that, I'm going to go sell as many customers as I could. And I was selling DirecTV and AT&T services, door to door. And this was in Chicago in 2017. And something that I did differently, because I'd gone to an event and had some coaching on getting clarity about your game plan. Like, how are you actually going to achieve whatever it is that you're setting out to achieve? And what I ended up doing was creating, and I'll show this on a different slide, is I went through and I spent, because I was obsessed with this. Right. And I was the point where I was thinking about what are the different things I would need to do to win this competition. And this is actually a journal from 2017, one of my journals. And it came out, and what I did was I wrote down a list of things saying these are the things that I would need to do in order to beat Mike. And I came up with 21 different things that I would need to do. Right. I'll read just a few of these. So things like that popped up on this list. Now, how many of you have a GPS or 411? Okay, this is going to tie into the KW kind of system of the GPS and 411, which we'll talk about. But this is like my GPS, and I didn't realize it until looking back at it now. that it was formatted a very similar way. So what I did at the very top was I put the specific goal, how many homes I was going to sell. And then I went through and just listed, I said, I'm going to go to bed early, 10:30. I'm going to wake up at 5:30 and win. I'm going to eat healthy with no sugar. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to stay energized, even if I don't feel like it. I'm going to read every morning. I'm going to have lunch for 15 minutes. I'm going to keep track of progress on the board. So I just went through and listed all the things that I would have to do in my mind to make this a win, right? Now, prior to that, the record for DirecTV homes sold in a week was 31. And so my goal, I said, oh, I'm going to beat the company record. I'm going to get 32. Okay, and that's the goal that I had written down. Now, if you look closely, I actually scratched that off halfway through the week, because the first day I sold 10 customers. Second day I sold 10. The third day I sold 10. And on Thursday, something happened. And this is where everything changed for me. Was the fourth day, the fourth day. So Thursday morning, I was driving out to the area, and it was about a 30-minute drive to the neighborhoods that I was knocking. And I started to think of all the individuals. There was a Facebook group chat that had gone on where somebody's like, oh, I'm putting my money on Mike. And I had other people who were talked about like, well, Mike's going to repeat and win again. And I actually had like a lot of anger, right? To the point where I actually also started to have some doubts. And some of you might have experienced this as well when you're halfway through, like we are right now this year. I started to have some internal doubts of like, man, I've never sold this many consistently. Like, what were the first 3 days of this week a fluke? Was that an accident? Like, and these things started to creep in to the point where I actually got angry with myself. And I was so angry that I was gripping the steering wheel and I actually started to cry. And I had music, blasting, getting ready, but it was out of anger that I had let this kind of doubt creep in to myself. And I started yelling some incantations to myself, right? And got out and I sold the first 4 homes right in a row. And ended up finishing that week. I'll fast forward. Well, actually, this is the important part. So one of the things that was driving me on a consistent basis every day was I changed my why. I changed the purpose behind the goal. Because when it started out at the beginning of the week, what was my focus? I just want to beat Mike, right? And I had a coaching call with my coach and explained where I was at. And I was like, man, I'm off to a great start, but this is how I'm feeling. Not sure if I'm going to be able to complete this at a high level. And one of the things that he asked was like, what's your purpose? Like, why are you doing it? Because if it is just for Mike, then yes, for sure, you have some challenges up against you. But what he helped me to get clarity on is I came up with this process. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is feeding hungry kids. That's something that stems back to my childhood and something that is a driving force for me. And so he helped me come up with this process. And he said, in your mind, every time you sell a home, you're going to be able to walk out and you're going to be able to feed. And you have to imagine this. He walked me through this process and had me vividly imagine being able to feed kids coming out of every home. And he said, now, when it gets tough, if you want to sit in your car or if you want to go home early, what you've got to do is turn around to that group of kids and tell them, sorry, I'm too tired. Or sorry, I'm just not feeling it today. And you have to create this emotional response towards that vision or whatever it is that's important to you. And ended up finishing out the week. I know it shows me in number 2, but I did beat Mike, okay? Just wanted to let you know. So it was based off of points quality. So we actually did sell the exact amount. So we had 54 that we both sold and we both had 50 installed. So then it came down to quality of the accounts and I was able to beat him. But it wasn't because of my drive towards him. It was 100% because of the purpose behind the goal. I did actually, with my coach, one of the things that he had me do was donate proceeds. And so I donated all the commissions from that week was $18,000 towards this cause. But it wasn't for the goal of beating him, because I know I would have fell short and not accomplished that goal. But we set company records, that experience. And it hasn't been until about last year that somebody's actually gone and beat that record. So we've held it for a little while, which has been pretty cool. So law of purpose. My question to you is, what is your purpose? You are in one of the toughest industries on the planet. And if you don't have a strong enough purpose, you are going to feel a lack of energy, a lack of excitement. You're going to feel that, hey, times are tough. I don't know if I want to still do this. So getting clear about what is your purpose, what's your driving force. who or what is important to you. Usually translates to something outside of yourself. It's who and the what outside of you is important. Okay. The next one is the law of planning. Law of planning. So this is a picture again of that. In one of my goals, you can see on there as well, was a trip to Dubai. So I told myself if I beat Mike, then I'd be able to go on a trip to Dubai. So that was also a driving force for me. And then that was the specific, steps that I had written down of what I was going to do. So proper preparation. Abe Lincoln, he says that give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Now, this is where I'm curious. How many of you have a routine where at least every week or every other week at the very latest that you look back at the goals you set at the beginning of the year and you recalculate what you need to do to stay on track? How many of you have that process? Weekly goal setting. Okay, cool. So 3 or 4 of you. Okay. This is the one thing that I will promise, if you change nothing else, will increase your effectiveness in life and business. Okay. And that's the specific process that we're going to go through in a moment. We're going to go through an exercise on that. So proper preparation prevents, has anybody heard that quote? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Okay. So preparation is key. Don't shortcut yourself by going straight from the goal to action. Make sure that you're defining what are the steps I'm going to take to do this in the most effective and efficient way. Next, law of prioritization. So the one thing, great book. We have some copies upstairs if you need them. If you haven't read it, highly encourage it. Is realizing most people will look at productivity, the one thing. Yep, the one thing. Yeah, it's a KW staple. Great book. So the law of prioritization. So productivity, most people look at, well, how much money can I earn? How many pounds can I lose? They look at specific goals, but they don't realize that below the surface are the important pieces that actually are the lead measures to achieving that goal. These are the pieces that people most often overlook. One, again, we just talked about the purpose, but the next one is priority. You have to be able to say, how many of you have a task list that probably has 25 items on it? 50 items, 100 items, right? The task list will never stop. So what you have to do is be wise enough to say, well, which ones are the most important, right? Not all priorities are created equal. So you have to spend the time each week of saying, if I were to do one thing this week, what deserves my time? What's going to be the highest impact on the goal that I have? And then if I do accomplish that and I earn the right to add a second priority, which priority would be number 2 for me? So most people, when they look at a task list, which task do they go for?
Easiest.
The easiest, right? Which one is going to be the least amount of energy that I put out? And this is why you actually want to have 2 different lists. You want to have a priority list, and then you want to have a task list. Okay. A task list are the things that you often think are urgent, but they're also not the most impactful for your goals. The priorities are the things that you know are going to move the needle and have the biggest impact on what you're trying to accomplish. And you have to keep them separate. Otherwise, you will get distracted by the task list, the to-do list. Okay, so separate those 2. Keep the most important thing the most important thing. Great wisdom from Gary. Keep the most important thing the most important thing. Law of action. The law of action. Here's what I would have you write down on this one is do not underfund and over-expect. Do not underfund and over-expect. Okay. Too often people will set a goal and I'm just going to use $100,000 for simple math or for simplicity. Where somebody might say, I have a goal of earning $100,000. And what they will do is look at that goal at the end of the year and wonder what happened. Why did I not achieve it? Right? And you can do this at scale, $500,000, $1 million, whatever your goals are. And the reality is, if you actually look back at your activities, how many of you time block on a calendar? Okay. Is Johnny in the back here? Okay. He's a great example of this. How many of you time block on a calendar, but at the end of the week, you go back and you audit your calendar and say, this is what I actually did, and adjust your time blocks based off what you did, not what you said you were going to do, right? Johnny does that, and that's a great practice to have, is go back and just audit your time. How did I spend my time, right? Did I invest it or did I spend it? Would be a good question to ask. So you have to also understand that there is a difference between being efficient and effective, okay? So you can be good at doing things right, but the question is, are you doing the right things? Okay. This goes back to being very aware around priorities and saying, hey, I could do 10 different things to achieve this goal, but what would be the one thing that has the highest impact or the highest return on investment of my time and energy on this goal? Okay. So yes, it's great to do things right, but it's better to do the right things and get in that habit. The other part of this is making deposits, okay? We've talked about this before. I had a wise mentor who told me, he said, what you appreciate appreciates in regards to relationships, right? What you appreciate appreciates. Now, we're in real estate, so what does appreciation mean to us? Equity goes up in value, right? So if you want to have a relationship grow in value, you have to make deposits, right? It's the exact same thing with your goals. You've got to make consistent deposits into those goals. And that's where, going back to that first thing I said, is do not underfund and overexpect. Okay. Next is the law of persistence. The best math that you can learn is how to calculate the future cost of your current decisions. Calculate the future cost of your current decisions. Okay. I often think about this when I grab Taco Amigo at the end of the night, and I know I'm going to regret it, right? But I do it anyways. That's one of those things, right? Being aware of what is going to be the cost of this decision I'm making right now. Okay. That decision to hit the snooze button, how's that going to roll into and impact the rest of my day? The decision to not come to team meeting, right? And miss out on all those golden nuggets, this awesome group. Here's one of the cool things I think that's important with real estate is just understanding there's the law of compounding commitment, okay? This is one that's not on here. It would be tied to persistence, but Einstein, he talks about the compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world. I think it might be compounding commitment, right? All people that I have studied that have achieved great success, and I'm not just talking about business, wealth. You look at people who have successful relationships, who are successful when it comes to their health, when it's successful when it comes to just their emotional intelligence. You'll find that those individuals have stayed consistent with something over an extended period of time, much longer than a lot of other people would be willing to do so. Mark King, president of KW, he often talks about the extra mile. Has anybody heard what he says, what his perspective is on that? It's not crowded, right? Take the extra mile because it's not crowded on that road. And when it comes to real estate, highly, highly relevant, okay? Going above and beyond for your clients makes a big impact when you're building a repeat and referral business, okay? But when it comes to your goals, make sure that you are practicing that compounding commitment, that you know almost every goal that's worthwhile of achieving is going to be a marathon. It's not a sprint, okay? And just making that commitment up front, deciding that you're going to pay the price of that up front is half the battle. And then the law of review and evaluation. So again, this is going back to my journal from 2017. So this is That same week, every night I would come back and I'd write down my score. I'd also write down Mike's score to keep track of where I was in relationship to him, and just checking on progress. And this is one of the ones that I think is so important. How many of you have used a GPS before in your phone or on your car? Okay, good majority of you. Some of you are still using a map, right? Hunter, do you know what those are? Old school. So how many of you plug in an address that you've never been to? Let's say that you're driving up to Ogden, right? The dangerous area, and you've never been there before. How many of you are going to plug the address in and then just wing it? Just say, I'm going to just wing it and figure out how to get there. Or I'm going to look at the map once and then not double check it again. How often do you check it if you're driving from here to Ogden? Right? Yeah. You're going to consistently refer back to it, right? Make sure that you're on course. And what happens if you overshoot an exit? Reroutes you, right? So what process do you have in place for your goals? Because if you imagine a GPS, plugging in a destination would be a specific goal, target that you're wanting to achieve. Now you have to have some sort of system, some sort of roadmap that helps you to recalculate and say, I'm off course. What do I need to do to get back on track? What turn do I need to take to make sure that I'm back on the original path? Okay, and that's what we're going to get into right now, is that specific tool. But I will read this quote. So when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. So at least report to yourself. If you can get an accountability buddy, if you can get somebody else that's looking at your scorecard, your progress report, even better. Okay. How many of you in high school or elementary or whatever would hide your grades from your parents, right? Or would stuff them in your backpack? I would tell my mom, dog ate it on the way home, right? The reality is, if you are keeping score, it's the best way for you to know if you are on track or not. And oftentimes we don't keep track with our score or with our goals. We don't keep score of our goals, excuse me. Okay, so that's what we're going to get into as well. So those are the 7 laws that we just went through. Number 1, law of clarity, define what you want. Law of purpose, how big are your reasons? Number 3, law of planning, proper preparation. Law of prioritization, the myth that everything matters equally, it doesn't. Number 5, law of action, do not underfund and overexpect. Law of persistence is compounding commitment. And then the law of review and evaluation is consistently measure performance. Okay. We will send these slides out. Before we get into the specific goal achievement system, what are your thoughts, ahas? Which of these principles most resonated with you? Yeah.
Take the extra mile because the road is not crowded.
Yes. Take the extra mile. Road's not crowded. That's great. Riley. Awesome. Thank you. Let's get one more. Okay, Jenna.
The law of purpose. I think I've had some really I've had some ideas and goals about purpose, but I think today I've learned to dig deeper and it'll be a lot more meaningful.
Yeah, that's great. There's a good book called Start With Why. If you have, if you by Simon Sinek, if you want to really create some clarity around what is my purpose, if you feel a little lost on that, Start With Why is a great book to dive into. He also has a TED Talk if you want to dive into that. It's 15, 17 minutes long, and you can watch that, and he dived into the same principles in the book. Okay, so this is the goal achievement system. It's going to start with getting clear about what's called your long-term goals. So that's your bucket list. We talked a little bit about that. All right, create a bucket list of your long-term goals you want to achieve. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be remembered for? Then that is going to inform what's called a GPS, which stands for goals, priorities, and strategies. And it's actually a simple one-page document. It's a template that is a KW system that we provide you with. So if you don't have a template for it, we can get that to you. But your GPS is you're defining what the goal is, and then you're saying, okay, what are the 3 core priorities that if I accomplished would allow me to hit my goal for this year? So if my goal was to earn $250,000, what are the 3 core priorities that I would need to achieve to hit that mark? And then you're going to come up with 4 to 5 strategies for each priority. And those strategies are going to say, well, what are the specific methods I'm going to have to use or deploy with this priority? Okay. I actually think I might. So here's actually an example of it. So up at the top, I'm going to put my specific goal. And this is another term for this is business plan. Okay. A lot of people have big goals and very little have an actual defined business plan. So I'm going to say, what are the priorities and the strategies that I'm going to deploy to achieve my goal? So if my goal is to earn $515,000, or excuse me, $250,000 by selling or closing 20 homes or assisting 20 families, how am I going to do that? Well, priority 1 is I'm going to provide value to people I know. I'm going to invest into my sphere of influence, and I'm going to get 12 direct and 8 referrals from this system. And you're going to define each of those priorities and strategies that are going to help you stay on track. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is using something called a 411. And I'm going to show you a resource that I use that kind of combines the 2 into one page. So a 411 is the turn-by-turn signal. Okay, it's the intricate saying, hey, you've got to get on I-15 right now. And you've got to take this exit. And then you've got to take this turn. So the 411 is every step of the way, it's telling you how to readjust to make sure that you stay on track with the annual goal. Okay, and that's a weekly process. So we'll go into that. Number 4 is time blocking, making sure that the priorities end up on your calendar, not your tasks. Okay, your priorities should end up on your calendar for that week. Number 5 is creating a task list. So this is when time permits. Okay, this is not 9 to 11 a.m. Right? It's not prime time. So when time permits, I'll get to that to-do list. And then some sort of system for capturing thoughts. Because if you have these ideas and you don't have anywhere to store them or place them, your mind thinks that you have to do it right now or you're going to forget about it. And so it creates some urgency that you don't need. So just get it out of your head. Okay. So have a notebook, have some simple way of just writing things down and saying, when I get to this, I will, and use those thoughts at another time. So this page that I've given you all, this is how I've combined kind of the GPS with my own goal setting process. This is called the 12-week year, this book. How many of you have read that? Okay. So I'll give you just the simple breakdown so you don't have to go read it all. But it's 12 weeks is more effective time frame for achieving goals than the traditional annual goal setting process. Our brains cannot actually really comprehend like a whole year. It's just too far. And that's why you'll find a lot of people, when do they make their big pushes when they're in sales? First of the year and the end of the year, right? Like once you start a goal, that's when you have a lot of excitement. You have a lot of energy around it, which I'm sure all of these can relate to, right? When we set out at the beginning of the year. And then once we actually are coming up on a deadline for ourselves, we say, okay, I need to kick it into gear. So part of this is getting strategic with that and saying, well, I'm going to set 12-week targets and treat that like a year. So 90-day benchmarks or achievements. And this is going to help you stay on track with your annual goal. Very simple. If you're going to sell 20 homes in a year, how many would you need to sell each quarter? 5, right? So now the whole focus, your entire energy is committed to just 5 homes. Okay. It's kind of like if I were to say, I have $100,000 in my backpack over here. Anybody who can get an ERS signed by the end of the day gets that backpack. How many are confident that you would be able to go find an ERS to get signed today? Or at least by the end of the week? Okay. See? So the timeline creates a lot of urgency. Now, the reality is if I just tell myself, well, I just need to sell 6 homes this year and I've made X amount of dollars, right? Well, now I don't need to focus on the 6. I just need to focus on the 1. And that one, you create some urgency saying, and you have to trick yourself. Okay. A little psychology trick on yourself is saying, I need to sell one home. I need to help one family. And I've made my financial goal for the year. And your urgency is now all tied up in that one client, one transaction. Okay. And then as soon as you complete it, what do you tell yourself? Just one more, right? But chunking it down that way allows you to tap into so much more momentum and energy than usual. Okay. So this is what the 12-week year system looks like. I'll just read these two quotes. So most people grossly overestimate what they can do in a year and grossly underestimate what they can do in a month. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. This is a really good one. There is no unrealistic goals, but only unrealistic deadlines. Okay. So this is what it looks like if you flip over that page that you have. You all were given a piece of paper. So if you flip it over, this is just, my system is 3 pages for the whole quarter. So what happens is this is where my GPS goals end up. So I plan for my life, my business, and then my wealth. And so I'm setting my 5 core things. What do I want to achieve this year, but it's broken down into a quarter. That's going to help me. So up here, excuse me, this is my whole year goal. So my year goals are at the very top. Then I'm going to chunk it down and say, well, what has to happen in quarter 3 for me to stay on track with that annual goal? Does that make sense so far? So for example, if I were to say I'm going to run a marathon sometime this year, September 23rd, for example, well, what would my goal or target need to be this quarter? Well, maybe I'm going to run a half marathon to be on track for that marathon at the end of the year, right? So I'm setting a quarterly target that's a little smaller, and then you'll see it gets into the weekly. And on the weekly, it's week 1, week 2, week 3. And this is where I'm just spending about 20 minutes a week on a Sunday and doing my weekly planning and say, how well did I do with my targets this past week? And do I need to recalibrate? Did I miss a turn? Do I need to, let's say I had to set, 2 listing appointments. Well, I missed 1 last week. So now I can just make that up this week and I can do 3 listing appointments. Whereas if I wait for an entire quarter or half a year to assess my goals, how far off track could I be by that time? Right? So these shorter increments of looking back at your goals and saying, what do I need to adjust this week, makes it so much easier to get back on course and course correct. Okay. What you're going to do is there's this scoring system on the right-hand side where you're going to just put 1 means yes and 0 means no. Did I do it or did I not? Very, very simple. And at the end of the week, you're going to give yourself a total score. And in the book, it talks about how if you achieve at 80%, you're going to be probably in the top 5 to 10% of your whatever industry you're in. Okay. You don't have to be perfect. It's just 80%. Okay. And this is the 12th week. So this is I only gave you 1 page, but I will send the PDF where if you want to use this system, you can print it out, because then you're just every single week looking at where am I at in relationship to my goal and what do I need to tweak or adjust to get back on track. Here's some good weekly reflection questions that are at the very bottom, which says, what was your goal? How did you do? Based on how you did, what needs to adjust? And then score each system or each activity. And then you are able to divide that by the total amount possible. So if I did 3 out of 5, right, there's a specific percentage that I accomplished in that given week. So you'd write yourself a score based on a percentage. Okay. So that's the system, getting very clear every week about what needs to happen. Now, if nothing more, at least do a quarterly goal setting process. If you're not going to do it every week, I would at least hope that you do it quarterly, if not monthly. That is what's going to be the best way to guarantee your progress and help you achieve at the highest level. Thoughts, ahas, if we wrap up.
On the GPS page versus progress made, how does that differ from the score?
On the first page?
Yeah, progress made.
So right here, you're going to put 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, for example. Well, that would be 100%. So the progress made would be 100% progress for that. Yeah, great question. So, or I would say 70% if I only hit 3 out of the 5 targets.
That's the same score then. What's the progress made?
Yeah, so these are, I do this one on an annual, or sorry, this one on a quarterly, and then this is on the annually. So I don't know why I did that, but the score on the weekly ones, it says score. It's the same thing. Yeah, great question. So the last piece, this is kind of the perspective, is your GPS is really your map. Okay. The GPS is your business map. Your 411 is essentially the compass, saying which way am I headed? Am I headed in the right direction? Real estate is your vehicle. Okay. This industry is your vehicle to getting to where you want to go, your destination. And then the persistence, your compounding commitment is your fuel. Okay. So those are the four things, four keys to focus on. Okay. Awesome. Let's get 2 or 3 action items that you're going to take out of this, and then we'll bring up Adam with IBEX. Got Renell here.
You want to start?
Sure.
So,
Just
Okay.
action item or aha.
yeah, I love it because my year started off totally different with my mom passing and everything. And so it really gives me an opportunity to reevaluate what my goals are. I'm familiar with this. I have a planner that just does the whole 90 days like that. But I love it. I love the way, just those 4 things that you did at the end, the GPS and the 4-1, et cetera, is really helpful. And you really presented it well. So it just gives me a chance to go back and just get clear again. And so anyway, it's just really good. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Got Cash.
One thing that I realized is that I have a task list, like I'm sure everybody does, but I definitely don't have a priority list. So that's my action plan. I'm going to make a priority list and follow that, more focused than my task list.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, one more. Got Riley.
Yeah, I went and made a note in my system. I really appreciated what you said about there's a task list and a priority list. And then I'm even going to break that down into more of like what I call a GSD list, get shit done, just because I feel that I have just this like overwhelming amount of tasks. I've started to kind of delegate like more importance, but I think even just separating them completely will get rid of that mental fatigue of like, every time I look at my tasks, seeing the 30 things that need to get done outstanding, but just focusing on like the 1 to 5 that are crucial for the day. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Riley. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. We've got Adam coming up. Give him a hand with IBEX.